Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Live at 5. I'm David Maron with the nonprofit Ventura County Civic Alliance. We have a terrific show for you today, so please stay with us. You're going to really like to hear from our community leaders and business entrepreneurs that'll be speaking today. Every 2 years, the Ventura County Civic Alliance publishes the State of the Region report, and we distribute it throughout the community. We focus on 10 categories, areas like agriculture, transportation, education, and our speakers today are going to focus in on the areas of economy, housing, and public safety. The report can be downloaded for free from our website. The website is www.civicalliance.org. Now, one of the key reasons why this report is so popular is the writing of our author, Tony Biosotti. Tony and I have worked together on these reports for many years, and we are fortunate to have him with us today and also for his amazing writing. Tony, great to see you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you. You are much too kind. My name is Tony Biosotti. I did write the State of the Region report and have for the last, this is the 5th installment, so every 2 years since 2013. I'm also the executive editor at the Pacific Coast Business Times, the weekly business newspaper for Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties. I've been doing that for a year and a half or so now. So this report was the first time I got to write this while I had another full-time day job, which was fun. But now I know even more about the Tri-County and particularly the Ventura County economy. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guests?
Yes, our first segment is going to focus on the economy and jobs. Both what's in the state of the region and a little beyond that. Our two guests for that segment are Aime Krause with Atara Biotherapeutics and Travis Mack with Saalex Solutions. Aime, I want to just let you introduce yourself here. Go ahead and take it away. Tell us a little bit about Atara and what you do there.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me tonight. My name is Aime Krause, and I am the Chief People Officer of Atara Biotherapeutics. We are a clinical stage biotechnology company based out of South San Francisco, but with a very large presence in Thousand Oaks here in the local area. We have 3 assets that we focus on. We have programs focus on multiple sclerosis, PTLD, which is a lymphoma, as well as some CAR-T programs. I also teach at California Lutheran University and have been a resident of the area since 1993. Happy to be here.
Great, thank you. We are happy to have you. Travis, you're the founder and CEO of Saalex. Tell us what that company is, and I also understand there's an associated business that you guys have spun off in recent years. So yeah, tell me a little bit about the company and what you do there.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. My name is Travis Mack. I'm the president and CEO for the Saalex Corporation. We are a aerospace and defense company supporting the Army, Navy, Air Force, and program-related federal contracts in the local area. We have about 600 people nationwide, primarily focused and working with the Department of Defense. We also have an information technology arm called Vallejo Networks, and where we do information technology support for small and medium-sized businesses. So we're excited to be here and to talk to you about the state of the economy. And thank you again for having me.
All right, thank you. Well, we'll get right into it. My first question.
So, Tony,
no,
should
we
introduce our other guest as well?
Let's introduce our other guests. We do have another pair of guests for our discussion of housing, which will be coming up very shortly. Linda Braunschweiger is with the Housing Trust Fund, Ventura County. And once again, forgive me, my slip there a moment ago. Didn't mean to skip you. Tell us a little bit about the
We forgive you.
and your role there.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm Linda Braunschweiger, and it's an honor to be here today. I'm the CEO for the Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County. I'm also the CEO for the Housing Land Trust of Ventura County. And the Housing Trust Fund is a revolving loan fund for the development of affordable housing. We are similar to a nonprofit bank. We've done a little over 18 million in loans, which has generated 847 units in our short 6-year history. So We are the fan favorite of developers that are building affordable housing, so we can help them get those projects moving. We're very excited about the work we do, and I'm pleased to be here tonight.
Thank you. Our other housing expert is Troy Brown, who's the city manager in Moorpark. Troy, I'll turn it over to you. And I think people generally know what the city of Moorpark is, but tell us what a city manager is too.
I would hope so. Well, thank you for having me here tonight, David and Tony. Really proud to be here. The city manager, in a nutshell, is the chief operating officer of a municipal corporation. I don't produce a widget, but we certainly provide vital services to the community. I've been now involved in local government for about 26 years, and I've had the pleasure to serve in 6 different counties in California. My career started just over the hill here in Santa Clarita. And in my spare time, I'm really proud of this. I am the president of the International City County Management Association, which is the professional association for local government professionals all around the world. We have 12,000 members, so I get to see quite an array of different governance models out there, and really enjoying that. So really glad to be here tonight.
Thank you. And then we're going to wrap up later on with a segment on public safety, some of what the State of the Region report has to say about that. And we are delighted to have the Ventura County Sheriff, Bill Ayub, with us, who will be talking to us about crime, public safety, and associated topics. Sheriff, thank you for joining us. And again, I'll turn it over to you. Here's one where I think, again, people know what Ventura County is and probably even what a sheriff is. So introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me this evening. It's great to be here with you all. I am the 20th elected sheriff of Ventura County. I'm a local guy. I was born and raised in Ventura, and I've spent my entire adult life serving the community, 36 and a half years in public safety, 26 of the last years with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. So I was a municipal police officer in a couple different places, including Las Vegas for a few years. Here at the Sheriff's Office, I worked in every division with assignments in patrol, detention, aviation, as an academy instructor, SWAT team member, investigator, administrator, and at every rank from deputy sheriff through the appointed position of assistant sheriff before being elected in 2018. So I've got a pretty good idea of what's going on around here, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you about it.
Thank you, Bill. We're delighted to have you, as Tony said. We're going to go ahead and start off with our economy section. We'll talk about business and jobs. And just to set the context a little bit, the State of the Region report describes essentially a mixed bag economy. Here in Ventura County, we are recovering from the pandemic-induced unemployment losses. We also saw a real hit in tourism, and salaries are now rising in many industries. But tourism is coming back, and we're also seeing situations where we're losing jobs in the high-paying industries like finance and information technology. The cost of living is certainly significant here in Ventura County, making it hard to survive. And as this chart shows, the economic output has been pretty much flat in Ventura County for about a decade. The important thing with this chart is that it's adjusted for inflation, and it just shows that our economy has hovered in the $48 to $50 billion range for almost a decade. So in Ventura County, companies like the Saalex Corporation and Atara Biotherapeutics, these are growing companies with high-paying jobs and creative leaders. These are the kinds of companies that we need here in Ventura County. Travis, I'm going to start with you. You've managed to grow your company. You started locally and now it's national, but let's focus on Ventura County. What were some of the challenges growing your business here in the region, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Well, thank you for that question. In Ventura County, which certainly has some built-in advantages. I mean, it is absolutely beautiful to live in Ventura County. But with all that beauty comes some challenges as well. Over the years, we've had to be creative in how we've done things. We've had to look at things in a different perspective. So I think our creativity and how we address different problems, looked at different solutions, looked at ways that we could do a few things differently, has served, as an advantage and as a benefit to the Saalex Corporation. We did not focus in on doing things one certain way. We tried to be creative, and we looked at different ideas from across the spectrum. How do we keep people? How do we continue to grow? How do we offset, the high cost of, living and things of that nature? And we've been able to do that. Diversity of thought has been really, really a good thing for us. And we've tried to solicit ideas. We just kept asking a bunch of dumb questions and got real good answers that helped us move in a very positive direction and help us grow over the years. And I think we've been very fortunate in that manner.
Tony?
Thank you. Aime, I want to ask you the next question. Atara is based in the Bay Area. So I guess I wanted to ask you, why Thousand Oaks? Why Ventura County? What is it about here? You didn't have to be here. This isn't where the company started or where it's based. So specifically for a biotech company in your industry, what is it about Thousand Oaks that got you here?
I will share a little bit of history with Atara because we started as actually a co-located company. The original CEO and the co-founder, one was located in the Bay Area and one was located and it didn't want to move because it was such a beautiful area out of the Thousand Oaks area. So there was a kind of an agreement from the very beginning with the two co-founders, and the companies just grew around them. But obviously the manufacturing capabilities, the operational capabilities, the R&D capabilities started to grow, since 2016, and that has been, a significant number of the employee base that Atara has. In fact, San Francisco, we have probably about 60 staff members in the location there. But by contrast, in Thousand Oak, we have several hundred. So there's quite a large employee base. But historically speaking, it was because our two original co-founders felt very passionately about the areas that they individually lived in. So it's been, I would say, as we headed into the pandemic, a bit of a strength to be an organization that's been co-located and kind of grown up using technology to communicate.
I know that there's been a lot of effort in both the public and private sectors for Thousand Oaks, Westlake Village, the Conejo Valley to be a real biotech hub. I don't know if it's maybe a second tier or 1A. And, I know that San Diego, the Bay Area, Boston, those are some of the really big ones. But how successful has that been, do you think? Not just for Atara specifically, but for the industry in general. I know there's a whole funding infrastructure now. There's a major venture firm called Westlake Village Biopartners that's looking to fund biotech companies in Southern California, specifically in the Conejo Valley, and they have office and lab space for them. So, how's that going, and what else needs to be done, whether it's government policy or private sector, whatever, to make the Thousand Oaks area even more of an attraction for biotech companies, whether they're new or relocating or expanding?
Absolutely. And you bring up Westlake Biopartners, which has been kind of definitely something that's been fueling the areas to be a hub. Beth Seidenberg, who was a major partner in that venture, she sits on Atara's board of directors. Sean Harper, I know, also plays a big part in Westlake Biopartners. You look back a few years ago, and there was only one game in town when it came to biotech in the area, and they kind of held court here in Thousand Oaks for a couple of decades. And then it wasn't until, hopefully I don't miss anybody along the way, but it wasn't until really kind of Kythera started to pop up. That was kind of number two. And then, with the acquisition with Allergan, then kind of Atara came on scene. But in the last couple of years, there has been just an incredible boom in the Thousand Oaks, corridor for startup biotech companies. Just to name a few, you've got Instill Bio, Arcutis, Capsida, TCR Squared, just to name a few. And many of them are even kind of booming around the Rancho Conejo area. But what do we need more of? Wow, gosh, talent. It is an incredible, I would say, not to use a cliche, but really a war for talent. We are surrounded by incredible universities in the area. But we're kind of, trading talent nicely right now, but there's definitely a shortage.
Yeah, the biotech kind of cluster in Thousand Oaks is something that people have talked about around here for 20 years. And it feels like you said, within the last 2, 3, 4 years, it's actually happening. You mentioned competing for talent. I guess this is a question for either of you. The State of the Region, was published last year. It doesn't have a lot to say about what's going on at the exact moment right now in the economy, which is inflation, competition for talent, the Great Resignation. Tell me a little bit about how or whether that's affected your company. If you're seeing a lot of turnover, if you're seeing a lot more competition, either for your own current employees or for people you want to hire. Again, I was thinking of that as a question for Aime, but whoever wants to.
I'll piggyback on what Aime just said. I mean, I think she hit the nail on the head. I think we are competing nicely for talent. It is the number one objective. I think companies, certainly small businesses in the local area, have had to think about, how do we do this differently? And how do we go to the source? I mean, we are actively, true enough, the pandemic, had certainly its disadvantages, but it also had a few advantages built in there, right? Some things that made us think about how do we hire and what's really important in hiring. So I think we are taking a look at, for lack of a better term, growing our own workforce. Got to start looking at the universities and basically planting our own seeds and growing our own seeds. So when those seeds bloom, right, they're going to come and they're going to work for us because it is a challenge. And we're fighting every single day to be creative, to increase benefits. Wages are going up. So it is certainly a struggle, but we certainly need and have to look at how we hire and be open to changing the way that we are doing things. Like we just had this one issue the other day where we had this wonderful person. They didn't want to move, and the HR team says, we're done. I was like, no, we're not done. We can do this position remotely. So those are the kind of things that we need to start looking at and paying a lot of attention to, and being open to new ideas about how we hire.
Absolutely. And one thing that I would add to that, to pay particularly attention to, because the pandemic has really gotten, a shift in our thinking about where work is done, is that, we're seeing a little bit of an outflow of people that live in Ventura County that have always kind of maybe wanted to live maybe in a lower cost area. And because the competition for talent is so fierce, employers they don't have any other choice to think outside of that box. If I'm going to keep that talent and keep them engaged, I might need to let that remote work happen.
Absolutely.
Or I might be able to, get a broader talent pool if I'm willing to hire this particular job from another area, much, much more so even than pre-pandemic times. So it poses a particular challenge when you're starting to see maybe an outflow of people out of Ventura County for this reason, as well as some of the hiring that are going to people that are living outside the communities.
Absolutely. There are no more boundaries. There are no more boundaries. And that's what I tell my folks. There are no more boundaries. You look at competence and whether or not they can fulfill the effort that you're trying to accomplish. Other than that, you kind of have to go with it in this day and time.
And when we talk about boundaries, we still have a Ventura County that needs to bring in more workers, more businesses. Aime talked and Tony about the venture funds. Travis, I'm wondering from your perspective, is there a need for more venture funds, venture capital to sort of give a turbo boost to growing companies like yours? Are there other ideas you have to help increase our economy?
Well, I love Ventura County, and but I'm a realist as well. I said previously that Ventura County has some built-in advantages. I mean, it is a beautiful place to be, without a doubt. But with that, there are some disadvantages that are built in that makes it very challenging to grow. I think Tony had mentioned, it's kind of been flat over the last 10 years. There's a reason for that. I will say, as a CEO, I have to be looking out for the best interests of, my workforce and the people that are engaged with our organization. And it is a very difficult conversation to have when someone comes to you and says, hey, you know what, there's just other alternatives than, this high cost area that I'm living in. And not to mention the very difficult business environment sometimes that's put on you. So I'm going to say that, hey, we need to start looking internally, and we need to figure out how we can do better, because I think that we're losing the competition in some areas from an overall, this is where I want to live, work, and play at.
Okay. You mentioned the difficult business environment or some of those challenges. What are you referring to? Is that something that local businesses or chambers could alleviate, or is that something more that we need electeds to work on?
I think it's a combination. Certainly, the elected officials, with regards to the business environment and maybe easing, some of the requirements of local businesses, anyone that can, and the chambers advocating, for businesses and things of that nature. So I think it's a combination of the two entities that can do some things in order to make it a little bit easier to operate in the area.
Okay, thanks.
Aime, I wanted to ask you about attracting and retaining workers, in your industry and at Atara. What are the biggest challenges you face, whether it's housing and cost of living, or education, STEM education, people coming out of schools around here? You're in the human resources, the people end of your business. So tell me what the big challenges are for Atara in filling its workforce.
I think one of the biggest challenges that we have, other than there being a bit of a short, there's clearly a shortage of talent, right? I think Atara does. I'm going to brag a little bit. We do a really good job attracting talent, but then the key is retaining them, right? Because the job market is so hot, wages are rising. It's almost like you need to be able to keep up. And if you don't keep up with that and keep a very close eye on not only wages, but the culture of your company, making it, compelling and interesting, making sure you're developing your people so they feel not only like they are paid well, but also that the employee value proposition, the total package, the place that they come to every day is compelling and happy. All of those things have to be put together, and you have to be on your toes at all times, because the recruiters are calling, and we know this, to your best employees every single day. So when I talk to other, chief people officers or other biotechs, we all say the same thing. Our biggest challenge is keeping people.
And has the kind of the new world of remote work, I'm not actually sure, at this stage in 2022, how prevalent it is in your industry, but I know, especially in a lot of tech fields, it's become kind of a semi-permanent, maybe permanent perk that a lot of workers are going to have. Does that increase that pressure? Because now if someone wants to hire away one of your employees and it's a company in the Bay Area, in the olden days, that person would have to be willing to move. Now they can switch jobs and start at their new company the next day, even if the new company is hundreds of miles away. Have you found that to be increasing that pressure?
Absolutely. And also, if you think about my person that runs talent acquisition at my company said, all the barriers are removed even to interviewing. Back in the olden days, 2 years ago, somebody would have to be like, oh, I'm sick, they could fly out to do an interview. And it was like a big deal. Those barriers are gone. All they have to do is put an appointment on their calendar, and people are being interviewed virtually, being job offered virtually, not even having to leave their house. So again, you have to really, really be on your toes, and you don't want to be on your heels. So when your staff member comes to you and says, I'm resigning because I have this offer from another company that not only is more money, but they're going to let me work from home or from another state, you're now back on your heels and having to react to that. So you really need to lean into this and challenge your leaders at your own company to say, where can we be ahead of this curve to make our employee value proposition even more attractive to keep people?
Exactly.
And at this point, I'm being told, I'm kidding, I don't have an earpiece. I am being told, though, that it's a time for a brief break. So I will let that happen now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Maureen McGuire, the new CEO of the Farm Bureau of Ventura County. I'm so excited to be here tonight and remind you of the importance of farmers, farm workers, ranchers, ranch hands, and the agricultural community in this vibrant county. They really are outstanding in their field. You can learn more at farmbureauvc.com. Thanks.
Hey everyone, this is Scott Sanford with City National Bank. I am a relationship manager focused on serving the needs of businesses and nonprofits in our community. I am a recent transplant to Ventura. I moved up here about a year and a half ago from Venice. I could not be happier, even on windy days like today. Very much looking forward to hearing the updates from Live at 5 and cannot wait to meet all of you in person. Thank you so much for joining. If you ever would like to reach me, my email is scott.sanford@cnb.com. Would love to hear from you. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on now to talk about housing and related issues. Our experts in the housing area, as we already said, are Linda Braunschweiger and Troy Brown. We're going to start with Linda, who is the CEO of the Housing Trust Fund of Ventura County. I think you told us a little bit earlier what a housing trust fund is. So I think I get it. But the housing market, I don't have to tell anyone, is a little crazy in Ventura County. There's a lot of data about that in the State of the Region report. Sale prices have been going up tremendously. Rents have been going up. The slide you're seeing right now, the bottom line there is the vacancy rate in apartments in Ventura County. 2021 down to 1.37%, which is like all of those numbers are low vacancy rates. Anything under 5% is a tight rental market. And the current situation is extremely tight rental market. So of course, that means rents are going up. Linda, what do you think should be done? I know that your real area of expertise is in the affordable part of the market, but in both affordable and market rate housing, how do we get more housing, specifically more rental housing right now at all income levels?
Well, thank you for that easy question. It's a complex issue, no question. We needed more funding to get projects that have been in the pipeline for a number of years moving forward. We're starting to see that. No question, the state has added a number of funding sources, as has the federal government. We need flexibility within cities and the county when it comes to infill housing and with regards to, in some cases, larger developments, multi-stories. We also need some changes to who's buying apartment complexes as well as single family homes. We have a lot of corporations that are buying properties, which are jacking up the prices. Maybe we need to look at that and consider whether or not they should have that access and taking it away from the individual home buyer. The Housing Trust Fund predominantly does multifamily housing. We fund it, and our goal is to make sure that these projects that the developers have worked years to get moving can get the financing, and our early financing helps them leverage additional funding. Currently, we do short-term loans, pre-development, acquisition, construction, very valuable money for a developer to get a project moving. So there are, it's a huge pipeline, but we're starting to see those things happening faster. We're also starting to see cities accept these projects and move them along also faster, which hopefully will benefit everybody in the community.
Yeah, I was about to ask, is financing, where does financing rank on the concerns that a developer of affordable housing would have compared to political constraints, whatever else keeps them from building when and as much as they want to build?
Well, yeah, we say we kill a lot of brain cells in affordable housing because it's not an easy project for sure. But financing is key. You can't get a project to move unless the funding is there. Unlike market rate, where the developer goes to a bank, shows that the rents cover the cost, wham bam, they get their loan. Well, affordable housing doesn't do that. So you have to have many, many layers of financing, which takes a long time in order to get all of that put together. But we are seeing, I think, a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel because I believe that the funding sources are coming now. We're seeing funding from the federal government that came through COVID that was apply. We got it within 2 months. It wasn't restricted. We put it out on the street. That's what we need for those of us who are trying to make sure that these developments are moving forward.
Thank you, Linda. Troy, the State of the Region report shows that the median house prices have shot up across Ventura County as well as the rest of the state. Linda talked about financing and developers, and a city cannot actually build housing, but you have to have policies that implement or create new housing. What do you think cities can do? And also, do you think maybe in Moorpark and other cities that not everybody wants more housing? How do you wrestle all of that and yet create the housing that's needed?
Well, that's the constant struggle.
Yes.
There's a lot of data there, but, from my perspective, and I'm sure, you guys would sort of agree with it, is, this is not sort of an issue that's unique to even Ventura County or Moorpark or California. There are housing issues across this country that are being driven by basic supply and demand. There's just not enough available units in the market, which is driving the price up. And that's putting constraints on the existing stock. So from, trying to achieve that balance, since we don't build it, we really need to, as municipalities, create the environment where housing can flourish. And the way that you do that, there's no magic bullet to it, right? I wish there was, because if there was a magic bullet, I would have fired it a long time ago. But you have to have really good policies around workforce housing. And I say workforce housing because I even think the term affordable housing, we all know what that means. There's a very formulaic equation to define that, but it comes with it a connotation. What we're really talking about is creating opportunities for nurses, policemen, grocery store workers, teachers, everyone that lives in that works in our community, to live in our community. So that's why I liken it to workforce housing. But for cities, it's a really a monumental shift in terms of how we approach land use. Traditionally, cities would look at their land use elements, between 10 and 20 years. The market is changing so quickly that you really sort of need to get into that land use element and make sure it's keeping pace with what the market is demanding, and looking at things like flex zones. Why does something just need to be commercial? How do you reuse those old commercial sites to turn them into commercial and residential that meets the needs of your community? And as much as I love workforce housing, and really I need that because my family can't afford to live here in many regards, but we need to be creating opportunities to just get units in the ground. When I first bought my house, it wasn't a 3,000 square foot house. I started off in a modular home that I built equity in and moved into a 1,500 square foot house and a 2,200 square foot house. So any relief valves to getting units in the ground will help. And along those lines, it's really important that you take care of your existing stock as well.
Yes.
Right? You have to look at your existing stock, make sure that you've got programs in place to be able to maintain that stock. But just getting those units in the ground will help. I think the affordable conversation, we could talk for about hours, but from strictly a supply and demand perspective, we've got to get those units in the ground.
Yeah, California is 10 years behind the game. We wasted 10 years of not building enough units.
That's right.
Let me put a few numbers with this. So in Moorpark, the city you're the manager of, the home ownership rate is 77%. That means that you have the lowest number of houses for rent in the county. And perhaps coincidentally, Troy, your average apartment rents were $2,544 in 2021. So it's going to make it incredibly hard for young people to live in your city. How do you build more housing, and how do you build more apartments? Linda wants to lend the money to build those apartments. What's holding you back? And we certainly heard from Travis and Aime the need for people to be able to buy those starter homes when they get the jobs with their companies.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors in play there. We're proud of that 77% of home ownership. We have great communities here in Moorpark. One of the data points I think that is incredibly important in that equation is, as Travis was talking about earlier, I loved what he said about, wages rising. Well, what is the cost to build a home doing? Right? The cost to build a home is outpacing wages, which is driving the price of those homes up. So the way that we do that is we get super, super creative, right? In terms of making sure that we've got the infrastructure in place to be able to accommodate the growth that's coming in. But then we take advantage of some of the assets that we have in our community as it relates to a high quality transit center. You know, we've got a high quality transit center. You get a lot of dispensation in state law if you build density around high quality transit centers. We partner with folks like the Housing Trust of Ventura County to help fund the workforce housing units that need to go in. We work with our developers to, you know, through either inclusionary housing within their development or as a policy, or having them fee out, and then us, you know, using that money to subsidize acquisition of affordable housing in other ways. You know, and every chance I get to bring this up, and I'm going to do this today. Every chance I get to bring this up, I talk about it, because we are really reeling from the impacts of that today. Now, I understand that, you know, some agencies out there, sort of a handful of cities abused redevelopment agencies, but that 20% housing set aside that was part of that tax increment that cities used for redevelopment was the primary tool that we had for affordable housing. With that gone, a lot of the options that we have are sort of taken off the table. We did great things with that here in Moorpark, and it's really, really challenging. So we do it through land use. We do it through, to the extent that we can, getting out of the way and letting development do what it does and letting the market do what it does to get those housing units in the ground. We've got over 700 units entitled and ready to go now that are completely in a developer's hands. So over the course of several years, I've been able to, you know, move a lot of that forward. And I think if we put a focus on workforce housing as we do economic development, that will provide the relief that we need. But there's no magic bullet to it. We've really got to get those units in the ground.
But
I wanted to
Moorpark's been a
ask,
great
oh,
example,
sorry.
real quick, of partnering with community groups and nonprofits. We did a partnership with them a few years ago on an affordable housing deal that brought in multiple layers of financing because the city invested in the Housing Trust Fund first. And then we took that and leveraged it. Their 50,000 at that time went to $1.8 million that we were able to put into that project. So
That's right.
they're a great example of partnering, and that's key to getting this done.
That's right.
I had a question I wanted to ask about the kind of local political climate for both of you. I wasted my 20s and 30s doing local newspaper reporting, sitting through hundreds of city council meetings for many years. I kind of just learned to accept that every housing proposal would be, you know, maybe not opposed by most of the community, but like would have significant community opposition. And the bigger the project, the denser the project, and the lower the likely price or rent of those homes, the more opposition it was going to have.
Right.
Is that changing? I mean, you hear about, you know, there's even an actual organization based in Oxnard called YIMBY, Yes in My Backyard, Ventura County, kind of, you know, an offshoot of the one in the Bay Area. Am I crazy? Is that public opinion situation changing at all? What have you seen, both from your point of view, you know, within a city and also from the affordable the trust fund? You know, do you think that's changing?
Linda, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. And I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, it's still an issue, but if there's anything that came out of COVID, it's the fact that people realize in a health crisis, if you don't have a home or a place to call home, you are risking yourself and others around you. And I think people's eyes really started to open and saying, well, even though I have mine, my neighbor, Mary over here, who's a veteran and elderly and can't afford an apartment, doesn't have hers. And I've seen a change. I don't know if you agree, Troy, but I think that folks are starting to recognize housing is critical, whatever the affordability or market rate or workforce, whatever you want to call it. That is where your livelihood and your health come from.
I think I agree with you on that, Linda. I think that when people experience it on a real level, it becomes very real to them. I'm going to caveat that. I think it is changing and it's not changing. I think it is changing from the perspective, at least here in Moorpark. I mean, one of the things that we're doing is we're having a community-wide conversation on what this city is going to look like over the next 40 years. So we're having a conversation, as many other cities are in Ventura, about the growth of the city and what that looks like. That really is going to be the foundation for us to be able to entitle projects in the future in a way that's consistent with the community. And those concerns are sometimes very real, right? In terms of the density, in terms of the impact. And there's a way that you can balance achieving growth and bringing in amenities while maintaining maintaining
Quality of life.
quality of life in your current neighborhood. But I'll tell you that the state is getting incredibly critical of, you know, the way that cities are approving or not housing units. And they're doing things up there that are usurping local control, like AB 9, or like allowing accessory dwelling units to be built by right. And in some cases, they'll tell cities, you must approve this project if it's consistent with your zoning. So I think through that community conversation, right, it's going to be an evolution of that, coupled with the state and some of the policies that they're coming down with in recognition of the crisis that we're in, are going to force that conversation to be had. And what we're telling our community, and what a lot of councils are sort of grappling with, is let us get out in front of this now, lest something happen to us. Right, and that changes the tone and tenor of the conversation. But make no mistake, there are still struggles with getting housing units put in the ground, but it's just a matter of really building quality development and having that sort of engagement with the community along the way.
Well, thank you both. We have about 40 seconds left. And Troy, I want to get one quick question into you.
Yes.
You're the president of this international organization, so you're seeing things around the country. Are there any other new innovative things you're seeing around the country that maybe could be brought here? I'm thinking of things like the 3D homes, modular homes built from old shipping containers. Obviously, a lot of people would not like some of these, but
Right.
Are there things that you have hope for? And again, we got to cut this short, but quick thoughts?
Not really. I mean, what I see around the country is that housing prices are sort of an issue everywhere. I was back in my hometown in Pennsylvania last month, and someone said, "Oh, they just built those new houses for $600,000." You know, I think that it's a supply and a demand issue, and the way different states are financed and the way project gets entitled are completely different. I'll tell you the thing: if there's a magic bullet out there, I'd like to sit down and have a conversation, which we could talk about all day, about the California Environmental Quality Act. CEQA is one of those things that Travis was talking about earlier that I think that we could look at to mitigate the real impacts of something, keeping us beautiful at the same time while providing a clearer pathway for projects to move in. It's a real problem.
Yeah, someday we'll spend a whole hour on that.
Spend a whole hour on that.
The newest CEQA headline was that they had a successful environmental lawsuit to restrict the enrollment at Berkeley, and they have to tell thousands of students they're not getting in anymore because UC Berkeley's neighbors sued under CEQA. Anyway,
Wow.
I think we should go now to another message from our sponsors, and then we'll come back and talk about public safety.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is Scott Sanford with City National Bank. I am a relationship manager focused on serving the needs of businesses and nonprofits in our community. I am a recent transplant to Ventura, moved up here about 1.5 years ago from Venice. I could not be happier, even on windy days like today. Very much looking forward to hearing the updates from Live at 5 and cannot wait to meet all of you in person. Thank you so much for joining. If you ever would like to reach me, my email is scott.sanford@cnb.com. Would love to hear from you. Thank you all.
Hi everyone, this is Maureen McGuire, the new CEO of the Farm Bureau of Ventura County. I'm so excited to be here tonight and remind you of the importance of farmers, farm workers, ranchers, ranch hands, and the agricultural community in this vibrant county. They really are outstanding in their fields. You can learn more at farmbureauvc.com. Thanks.
Welcome back. In this segment, we're going to interview Sheriff Bill Ayub to learn more about public safety. The State of the Region report covers quite a bit of this detail, but there is nothing like having the sheriff with us. So Bill, thanks for joining us. Before we get started, I had a quick question. If I could just get your mother's maiden name and the street you grew up on, I could use that. So,
I'll pass. Thank you for
okay.
that.
Bill, I wanted to first give you a chance to just explain how the sheriff has contract cities and how that works with the other cities that have their own city police departments. Just give us a little background about the sheriff's department, please.
Sure. Sheriff's office is the county's largest law enforcement agency, public safety agency, really. In fact, we're larger than all of the other public safety agencies on the law enforcement side put together. So we have a very visible policing component where we police the unincorporated areas of Ventura County's 2,200 square miles. And then we also are hired by 5 of Ventura County's 10 cities to be their police force. So we in essence act as a municipal police force for those cities. We interact with the city councils and the city's leadership, and we tailor our policing for those cities' specific needs. The sheriff also tends to the county jails, a court system, has a complex prisoner transportation network between the jails and the state prisons. We operate a crime laboratory, an aviation unit, a regional police academy, a bomb squad, search and rescue programs, a marine program, and a whole lot of other things.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to jump in with the first question. We have a bit of time to talk about all this, but not as much as we wanted. State of the Region report shows that that you're doing an excellent job. State of the Region report shows that in 2020, Ventura County was the safest of the 15 largest counties in California, the lowest overall crime rate and the lowest violent crime rate of any of the large counties in the state. The slide that's up here now is the crime rate in Ventura County going back to 1994. It's down to half of what it was in the mid-90s. This is not a Ventura County phenomenon. This is most of the nation really saw some kind of big decline in violent crime throughout the 1990s and early 2000s. This is a question that 20-something years of social science research has not given us a clear answer to, but I will ask you to solve it for us now. Why do you think Ventura County is safer now than it was, say, 25 years ago? I'll just start with that one. Go ahead.
I'll explain to you my theories on the matter, and there are a lot of them. We have all sorts of reasons why crime goes up and down. Those crime statistics are the uniform crime reports that have been collected by the FBI since 1929. There's 8 components. They range from homicide, forcible rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, larceny, theft, grand theft auto, and arson. And those were established to give a comparison of crime across jurisdictions throughout the country. And what's happened since 1929 is crime has changed in many ways. We see a lot more fraud being committed by thieves that would not be captured in the uniform crime reporting. It's not one of the categories that is reported out to the FBI's collection. So I think that's one piece, that people are still out there stealing. They're just doing it in different ways, very often from corporations, large entities that don't report it. It's written off on the bottom line as shrinkage of some kind and passed along to the consumer in various ways, much like a retailer would dismiss things stolen in the course of their regular business. What I'm particularly proud of locally is the violent crime reductions. I was a homicide detective in the mid-2000s, and we had upwards of 15, 20 homicides just in the sheriff's jurisdiction during that period of time and into the 90s and 80s when I started. And today we're seeing very few gang-related incidents of violent crime. And we've really focused with our work with our youth, working on early intervention strategies to keep those kids when they move up in age into that crime committing age range of 18 to 25 or so, keeping them out of those gangs and out of that lifestyle, and giving them better opportunities to not make bad decisions and get into a life of crime. And that's a collaborative effort with community-based organizations, government law enforcement agencies communicating and working together like never before, and just the ability to share information and best practices that everybody is craving for adopting locally.
I have another big question that I'll ask you to give a short answer to. Our statistics in the state of the region run through 2020. I've seen, it's hard to say, but there's some, if I can say, there's anecdotal evidence that some statistics are up. A lot of cities are seeing a crime wave of some sort in 2021, where they saw, big spikes in violent crime, not up to those bad old days of the 90s, but definitely more than in recent years. Have you seen anything like that in Ventura County? How do you think the last, year and a half, 2 years of the pandemic has played out? How has that influenced the public safety trends in Ventura County?
So pandemic was really interesting, right? We've never had anything like that in modern history, really. And what we saw were businesses closed. So you had reductions in shoplifting and crimes associated with open businesses, check kiting, forgeries, that sort of thing. And people were home, so they were able to protect and defend their residential properties. So declines in residential burglaries and such. We saw increases in commercial burglaries, so break-ins to businesses that were not guarded by people. And then also some disturbing trends like this catalytic converter theft trend that we're seeing. There was a lot of vehicles left parked in industrial complexes where crews of thieves that largely came into our county from other places came to steal catalytic converters off of vehicles to change those in for the recyclable metals that are found inside. Apparently they're very valuable and it's a worthwhile endeavor for the criminal element.
Bill, I wanted to ask you about something. This is probably more philosophy and national as well, but when we saw the situation with George Floyd, a lot of us learned about inherent and implicit and racial bias within police forces. Recently, there was some text that were uncovered from Torrance police officers that were pretty distasteful and going on. So I'm wondering, what kind of policies do you have in Ventura County to train your officers and also weed out maybe any bad apples?
Yeah, I think this goes back to organizational culture, and what's acceptable and permissible. And we locally have had very stringent standards for those we hire. We've tested in a variety of ways through the background process in our recruitment of deputies for bias, for elements of bad behavior that would make us think this person is not going to be a good deputy sheriff in our community. We regularly give our employees training on bias and discrimination principles, things that we certainly don't want them to engage in, not only in their work capacity, but in the workplace. And then, of course, we have very strong policies established on bias-based policing, which staff is required to review annually and to adhere to always. Recently, the state enacted some legislation that compelled law enforcement agencies, not that we needed it locally, but compelled law enforcement agencies in the state to screen for bias in the recruitment process.
And what about any bad apples? How do you weed them out?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. People can change over time. Sometimes people with bad intentions slip into this profession. We do keep a watchful eye for things that would make us believe that somebody is going down the wrong path or that has tendencies that we didn't identify in the recruitment process. I mentioned those policies that we have. If we're alerted to somebody's violation of those policies, we have a dedicated team of investigators that follow up on suspected policy violations, and we have a well-defined disciplinary process to address violations of policy.
All right, we'll give it back to Tony for the last question.
Sure. Excuse me, I didn't know we were going back to me. Actually, one statistic that always jumps out at me from the state of the region, every time we do it, there's this huge long-term decline in juvenile arrests in Ventura County, in both felony and misdemeanor, way steeper than the overall crime decrease. And I know there's been a lot of changes in the way the state and locals, approach juvenile crime. They closed the state child prisons, most of them, which is good, I think. But I was wondering if you can shed any light on that. I don't have those numbers actually in front of me at the moment, but it's usually like a 70% decrease over 20 years in just the number of times someone under 18 is arrested. Are we seeing less crime among the children, or is law enforcement approaching it in a different way to try to, handle situations without arresting them as much? But how do you explain that?
It's actually both of those things. I believe in the public safety profession, there's a growing movement to address youth crime through pre-arrest diversion. So we catch a kid committing a minor offense, rather than putting that person into the justice system, that person is sent to some sort of youth intervention program. And we've got a number of those programs out in the community. It kind of harkens back to what I spoke about a little bit earlier about getting involved with the youth so that they don't develop into a life of criminality. And so we're seeing really good success with that early intervention and diversion. And I honestly think there's fewer offenders due in part, I believe, to a greater focus on this intervention and community programs that are just everywhere out there today. And the schools, quite frankly, doing a better job of keeping kids on the straight and narrow. I think it's really a collaborative thing. We also see a lot of technology out there that I think I call it the great binky for the public. It's keeping them occupied and busy and engaged. There's not a lot of idle time to think about capering in the community and committing crime. So all those things together, I think, is what is leading to a really marked decline in youth in our jail system.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's been great digging into some of the public safety issues with us, and there's certainly much more we could get to, but that wraps up our time for today. I do want to thank our outstanding panelists, Aime Krause, Travis Mack, Linda Braunschweiger, Troy Brown, and of course, Sheriff Bill Ayub. Tony, it's always great to work with you. Did you have anything you wanted to announce?
Thank you. I would be remiss if I did not plug the Pacific Coast Business Times. So I'll see if I can get a link here in our comments in our chat field. But go to pacbiztimes.com/subscribe, and you can use the promo code TIMES, TIMES, and so it's $50 a year, $49.99 a year with that code, which I think is $10 off. Like that. I should know this. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for indulging me with that. And yeah, thanks everyone for making this fun.
As a reminder to anyone watching, you can download the report for free at the Civic Alliance website, civicalliance.org. Also want to thank John Lockhart and People Media for producing today's Live at 5 show. Be sure to tune in again every month on the third Tuesday of the month for more Live at 5. Again, our panelists, thank you so much. I'm David Maron with the Ventura County Civic Alliance, wishing you a good evening.